No. Huh. All right. Hello, Rich. Oh, that reminds me, I need to. How did you get here already? I haven't even posted this in the podcast server Discord. Does Rich have the Oh, I guess the forum link. Yeah, I did do that first. Hello, Calicar and The Rock. Oh, yeah, you are in Carolina also. Right, yes. Congratulations, Richard. I'm glad you're one of my biggest fans. Unlike your co host who was threatening to fight me today in Russia. He called me, quote, a NASCAR looking ass. And I quote. Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about that, Rich. I'm sure it'll come up. I said I'd go at 8, but I might give it till like 8:02 or 8:03 since I was a little slower than I wanted to be getting the stream started up. No issues, just slow, dumb. All right, I will start my notes here with the chat questions. I also have the questions thread as well, so as well as Slappy's other contribution. Yay. I don't know if you saw the wager, Rich. All right. Okay, there's Rich's question added. I might actually have to research that. I might be in trouble. Error. Error. And Gordy Boom died, so I don't know who's going to give us our season 50 top scorers list. Dark days, I tell you, dark days. Oh, I'm sure he won't be braggadocious at all on the next Big Slappy. Owie. Ha! That's interesting. I was just sent an email with a PowerPoint slide. All right. I guess we can get into this. Where is... There it is. All right. You're not annoying me at all, emails. Okay, cool. That can wait. All right. Hello. This is Zach. This is the newest episode of the podcast I'll Regret Making, episode 64. Season 50 is over. The golden anniversary is mostly behind us. I mean, technically, we still have the IHF tournament and all of that jazz. But for the most part, we're ready to move on to the next 50 years of the SHL. And needless to say, it was an interesting, I think that's understaying a little bit, conclusion to season 50. And I did play a part in that, which I guess brings me to the first order of business of this episode. Dreadfully. So, for those who were living under a rock, of course, my Tampa Bay Barracuda faced the Calgary Dragons in the Season 50 Challenge Cup Finals, where we jumped out to a 3-0 lead in the series and then proceeded to lose 4 straight games. Now, before Game 7 was simmed, the fair gentleman Slappy Doodle struck up a conversation with me in the podcast Discord server, asking if I would like to partake in a friendly wager over the outcome of Game 7. At which point I figured, honestly, either I would win and win the wager, or lose, and whatever the wager was couldn't possibly be more embarrassing than being part of a reverse sweep in the finals, so sure, let's do this. And for longtime fans of the Big Slappy Hour, the longest running SHL podcast in history, are familiar with a couple of occasions where Bonk and Slappy have placed similar wagers. And their traditional wager of choice is the winner of the bet writes a script for the loser to read on the podcast. Of course, with, nearly 200, nearly 250 episodes between the two of us, mere money is no motivational factor for us to place a wager, so I decided, why don't we go with Old Faithful? I will wager that the winner writes a loser a script for the respective podcast, which he naturally agreed to. So it is my great pleasure to start this episode of the podcast with a wonderful manuscript penned by our very own Slappy Doodle, Otis B. Driftwood, on the Season 50 champion Calgary Dragons. It reads, and I quote, "In my life, I've experienced many wonderful things, been blessed time and time again. Never, though, have I known joy like I do this day. To be so lucky as to be out on the ice and experience the Calgary Dragons winning the Challenge Cup, there are no words. To see the Augmenet, you need a new copy editor, Slappy, by the way. To see the Augmenet, Mike Izzy, fly over the ice like a true dragon. To see the Parm King, Darth Asa Soze, work his dark magic. Watching Otis B. Driftwood control the ice like the boss he is, my life is complete. The only thing left for me to do is to fill out my application for the Dragon Bullet Club and pray they are accepting new members." I wonder if that's tampering. Anyway, I am proud of my Tampa Bay Barracudas and the fight we showed against the greatest team in the history of the SHL. To be second to the best is no shame. The Calgary Dragons are living legends, plain and simple. It is my honor to have played a small part in recognizing their greatness. Thank you, and God bless the Calgary Dragons. #CalgoWe. As a gentleman, I have fulfilled my part of this wager at this time. Yeah, so that's done. Slappy, it is spelled Augment for the future. Yeah. So, thank you, Slappy, for that contribution to the podcast. With that behind us, we shall move forward. Rich, I agree. And this is coming from Rich says in chat they should be embarrassed by the Calgary thing. And listen, I'm saying this from the perspective of a guy who has fully embraced Chomp Chomp Water Dog. You couldn't come up with a better hashtag than Calgary. I'm supposed to respect you as the season 50 champions, and your hashtag is literal baby talk. Come on, man. Come on. Anyway. So, as stated, Tampa losing in 7 in dramatic fashion to the Calgary Dragons in the season 50 Challenge Cup Finals. We'll talk about that in the questions, so let's get to it. But first, some outdated questions. And actually, let me make sure. I think it actually all conveniently starts here on page 35, and it does. So we start with Blues fan. What are your thoughts on the Joel Edmondson? Nope, there's not a they there. What are your thoughts on Joel Edmondson so far? Wasn't a huge fan of him being thrown in the trade when the Canes acquired him. However, he has been. I've enjoyed that. He has his role. He's that gritty, third pairing defenseman that you can rely on to play responsible defensively, get in front of shots, and get the puck out the zone. He does his job. And you need guys like that. So, you know what? Good for him. Is season 51 potentially the weakest class ever? I realized yesterday when Buffalo traded for first overall, and I had no inkling of an idea who they might be trading for, that, maybe the season 51 draft class kind of sucks. I know some names in it. I know Blues is in it. I know Rich's co-host, Adam, is in it. Hello to Rich in chat. Off the top of my head, I don't know if I can name another person. Evok's in it as a goalie, which throws a wrinkle into things. Can I name you another? Let me look at what would be the season 50 SMJHL draft and see if, am I just forgetting some people? Oh, that's good. It's just names with no links. Okay, this is helpful. Said no one ever. Okay, I know Alex Petrenko because he's Russian. Zune's in this class, right? Yeah, but also a goalie. I don't know who a lot of these people are, but I think some of them are recreates, and I just don't know who the user is associated with the player, and there's no way for me to tell on this super useless SMJHL entry draft page. Sick. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, man, I don't know. Season 32 is pretty rough. Rich, it's pretty bad. Referring to this draft class, MP7, Mook, Captain Squall, a handful of decent first gens. Okay, yeah, I see Mook's player now because Kreller. I remember Captain Squall recreating now because Fist retiring is a thing. Yeah, so it's pretty bad. Definitely has a very season 32 vibe to it. We won't know for sure until we get further down the road, but it's definitely not great. Any Tampa players fly under the radar? It's harder to fly under the radar once you get to the finals. I know you didn't ask that question with the benefit of that information. I guess the most under the radar performance of this season would probably go to Austin Roenick, to Leafer, because most seasons, if you're a rookie and you score 43 points, congratulations, you're Rookie of the Year. However, there was the awkward presence of one Mika Kandinsky this season. So, not so much. Not so much. Press somehow got 20 points this season. I don't know how that happened. There's some dark magic going on there. And 2 goals in the finals. I'm very disgusted by that. Really, really unfortunate turn of events there. Rich, season 28 was rough too. I'm not familiar with that one off the top of my head, but I will, at least if I look it up, likely know the names, which is better than I can do with season 51. So let's take a look at the season 28 draft because I'm easily distracted. Boop. Season 28. So Forfeited went first overall to Portland, a tradition unlike any other. Okay, so Michael McFadden, great. Mia Landvik, great. But they went behind Bennett Jones and Gunnar Rask. Jackson Cartier sure existed. Mikko Lina was good. Wiljan Zhang brings back nightmares from my time sharing Detroit with him. What a useless sack of shit that guy was. Quinn Stevenson, LOL. Prince Daniel James, Detroit legend, but never got past juniors in a meaningful manner. Dieter Dominique, shout out to Bilbo. Marc-Andre Malkin was pretty good. Yeah, no, this draft class was pretty bad. Yeah, no, this is not great. I would say this is definitely worse than season 32. We'll see how season 51 holds up to it over time. Yikes. Yeah, no, season 28 was pretty bad. Good call, Rich. Yikes. Thank you, Blues, for the questions. Habs fan from Ontario, who I think only showed up for like, oh no, he's still technically signing in. That's nice. Good on you, Hiffo. Are you still actually updating, or are you just signing in? Ooh. Oh, you made a fancy pick 9 hours ago. Hey, you haven't gone inactive yet. You will. Can you let Aho come to Montreal, please? No. Nope. That's just a no. Yeah, no. Thank you, Hiffo, for chiming in. Look forward to hearing from you again in 2 years. JSS, end of season thoughts. look, the weird thing about my time, that makes it sound like awfully too specific. I feel like, in general, when you go into a season, you don't really have a strong idea what to expect. You have a reasonable idea, okay, this should be a playoff team, or obviously you know if you're on a rebuild. But I can only think of a couple of times back when I was at Winnipeg where I was like, okay, this team should compete for a cup. And neither of those teams even made the finals. And I won 2 cups, but neither of those teams that won the cups was I like, oh yeah, this is the year, baby. That's just how it works out. So when I say this season exceeded my expectations, it's not like I'm saying, oh, I didn't think we had a shot in hell of competing for a cup. But that's just not the mindset you go into the season with, or at least I don't. I figured we'd be a playoff team, and then whatever happens in the playoffs happens. And so to get to the playoffs and finish first in the East in both the regular season and the playoffs, and to win 3 games against Calgary when nobody else could, and the West could even get more than 1 against them. Like, on paper, that's a hell of a season. Yes, it'll probably get remembered for the meme-tastic conclusion, the reverse sweep, whatever. If that's the most embarrassing thing that happens to me in the SHL, I've had a pretty frickin' charmed life, I've not got to lose any sleep over it. I didn't curse Simon T's name when it happened. I slept very well last night. Almost too well. I almost overslept for work this morning. So life goes on, and more importantly, the team is so young, so many up and coming stars that you don't count your chickens before they hatch, but I feel like we'll have plenty more chances of maybe not necessarily getting to the finals, but definitely, deep playoff runs or whatever. And so hopefully we'll be able to turn one of them into a cup. I don't, we'll see, but I'm pretty happy. And the way it ended doesn't change that for me. Maybe I'm too pragmatic for this silly site. I don't know. Thoughts on the performances of the following players and teams? Well, we've already kind of discussed Mika and Austin Roenick. Of course, Mika, I was very excited to see play so well as a Russian, which was an interesting juxtaposition while being in Tampa, because Tampa was like, OMG, why is this Mika person getting in the way of Leafer's Rookie of the Year run? And I'm like, yay, Russia. But whatever. All in good fun. Tampa Bay, like I said, just couldn't be happier without a season. I mean, obviously I could be happier. We could have won one more playoff game, but other than that, New England, really weird, season for them. I don't think anybody would have expected them to miss the playoffs, but those things happen sometimes. They definitely seem to be figuring something out there in the latter stage of the season, but by that point it was too late. I'm not, they're gonna, that'll happen. They're gonna be fine. It is what it is. Toronto. I mean, What can you say about Toronto that hasn't been said 1,000 times over at this point? You know, for them to have the success they did with the complete lack of depth they had, especially defensively, it's just bizarre. But you know, again, those things happen. Um, Fortunately for their sake, I think you have seen teams in the past where they see success earlier than they expected in a rebuild, and they take that to mean they're closer than they really are, and then they start making rash moves to try and accelerate the process, and they end up only cutting their own legs off. And I think it's a good sign for Toronto that you didn't see that overreaction. Um, I think they really need to stay the course, and obviously, especially with such a shallow draft, making the playoffs kind of hurts them actually in that regard. But you can still make a smart pick and make the most of it. Um, so you'll have that. Thoughts on who is goalie of the year, or as we call it, the John McBride Trophy recipient? I think you're going to have a hard time. It's tough because you have two really two guys. I feel like it's got to come down to either Cedric Robinson or Benjamin Blue. It's going to come down to which the committee rewards more. I feel like Robinson has the better save percentage. Blue has the shutouts. Um, it's literally from year to year, which is valued more changes. Um, Typically, save percentage gets a little bit more run, but in this case, Blue is close enough that with the extra shutouts, it should make it a conversation. I feel like. Um, then again, I could also see the committee getting swept up in Robinson's goals against average because that's obviously a super great stat. Um, we'll see. Um, it's been a long time since I was on the awards committee. MVP nominations are Mika Kandinsky and Kristaps Ball worth a nomination? Well, first, Kandinsky, no. If you're not the most valuable player on your own team, then you obviously shouldn't be nominated for most valuable player of the league. Will he end up probably fetching a nomination or two all the same, or at least votes on the awards committee, whether it's enough to make the top three or not? Will there be some thrown his way by being this league's second best scorer because it's really hard to look away from the points numbers, apparently? Yeah, probably. Um, I hope that's not how it plays out. But, you know, it is what it is. Rich, I would have tried to stop ML if he did something like that. I was quietly rooting against Toronto. Okay, so this is Rich is saying, and I'll summarize it here basically, that if ML were to try and make a trade to speed up Toronto's growth, Rich would have fought against it effectively, and he was hoping they did miss the playoffs, which they did not do. And so yeah, we're on the same page there. Um, as far as Ball, if there was ever a chance for a defenseman to at least get nominated for the award. I think this is a fine case for it. I mean, 56 points, 79 shots blocked isn't, prolific, but it's in the upper realm. Probably just outside the top 10, if I had to guess. Positive plus minus. Hits are a little low, but I mean, also just it's always interesting to see how some people value special teams usage. I could see it cutting both ways for him. I could see the 23 points being used as a positive, as being able to contribute in those situations. I could see it being seen as a negative. That it limits his 5v5 production. I've always been the mindset of, if you perform in whatever situation you're put in the ice, that you should be rewarded for it. You shouldn't, if you're prolific on the power play, they shouldn't look at you and say, well, you were too good at that. To me, that's stupid, but it's a prevalent argument I've seen from time to time. That being too good on the power play means you weren't that good 5v5 or whatever. I'm sorry, I thought the object was to score points. I don't know. Maybe I'm too simple-minded. If there was ever a chance for a defenseman to at least fetch a nomination, I think this is a good one. Unfortunately, it's also a time where ML, I feel like, has to be undeniably the MVP to carry Toronto into the playoffs with a really strong two-way season for a forward. But we'll see. I think that's it for JSS. It is. Thank you, sir. So we'll move on to the next contribution in the questions thread from CFJ. Hi, Zach. Hello, CFJ. First off, GG's to a great series. You really brought the fight to us. What were your thoughts over the course of the series as each game went by? How did the locker room feel as we inch closer to tying the series and eventually tying and winning the series? I must say Prince Devitt and Nikolai Evans have developed quite the rivalry in this Challenge Cup Finals interaction. I'd have to look closer at the play-by-plays to see if I agree with you on that. No offense, but I don't recall there being many interactions between our two players specifically. I might be wrong. It's tough with the play-by-plays, but I don't. I'd have to follow up on that. As far as the locker room or the thoughts, look. The cool thing about Tampa, we were really into this series. We were really hyped up. And even as the series started to go the wrong direction, did you see a couple of the comments here and there like, oh, Simon T, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sure. But for the most part, it was still a really positive, whatever, we'll just win the next one. Let's win the next one. Let's keep it positive. Let's keep it upbeat. And even going into the Game 7 where it's like, okay, well, now it's a coin toss, obviously. Like, we've won 3, you've won 3. Even then, it was like, okay, win or lose, it's really cool being a part of this team and having the camaraderie that we have. And then we lost, and there was a little bit of grumbling, sure, but then we moved on. And I think it's really, really a cool thing to see because I've been in plenty of locker rooms where people, players or GMs or whatever, get into this mindset that somehow Simon T owes them success. And then when, especially if, oh, well, I've done 8,000 test sims, and in those test sims, we have a 65% winning percentage in this series. And then, but guess what? So does probably the other freaking team. So one of you's gonna get your heart broken. Only one team out of 16 can win the championship. It's tough. Life sucks. Um, but you sometimes see these mindsets that, oh, well, I did all this homework and then Simon T didn't reward me for it. Yeah, because the league can only reward one team out of 16 at the end of the season. I'm sorry. And then you just see these, oh, well, Simon T screwed us, and, woe is me, and I don't know why Simon T never gives me anything good, even though I've, GM 2 championship teams or, won 3 championships with my last player, but Simon T never does anything good for me. That negative mindset just drives me insane. And I've gotten to the point now where I just will leave those places because, like, it's freaking, it's the SHL, man. It's not that serious. And I'm very happy to say there really wasn't a whole lot of that in Tampa. Did it suck to get reverse swept? Yeah. Will we be memes for a while? Probably. Is it the ghost of Clardy still haunting us for moving the team from Seattle? Hell if I know. Don't really care. We had fun. And we'll probably keep having fun. I'm sorry if that bothers people. I'd rather have fun than sit here and spend 15 minutes crying about where Simon T hurt me. Thank you, CFJ, for the question. That brings us to Slappy with questions and not, a wonderful script for me to read. Where does Tampa Bay go from here? Is the team poised to be in cup contention for this foreseeable future, or was this just a lucky run? I think we're in really good shape. I mean, obviously, you never can say for sure, but anything can happen. But I mean, you look at the composition of the roster. Yeah, our top defenseman is about to enter regression. Really, our top 2 defensemen. And yes, JSS's player is about to enter regression, and Trevor Wilson, the plan is for him to retire here soon. But if you look at from season 45 onwards, as far as draftees, guys who are still another like 4 seasons away from regression, you've got Noble's player, Nicholas Klaus. You've got Jenny's player, Olivier Cloutier. You've got J-Pox's player, Nolan Sawchuk. You've got my player. You've got Priss's player. You've got Calicar's player, Matt Colleen. You've got MCP's player, whose name I'm not going to try to... John to Bulk or whatever. You've got Jess's player, Gunnar Soderberg. You've got Leifer, who is probably going to pass me in TP at some point, even though he's a season behind me. We have... I'm pretty sure getting called up for season 51, Bruins 10's player, Casper's Cloud, who is already at 800 TPE as a season 48. There's a lot of promising talent still growing for Tampa. It kind of reminds me of when I was in Winnipeg, honestly, where yes, you had some older players like Manius and Fleming and Robertson, but that core coming up behind it is just so strong and so big that you can't help but get a little excited about what the future holds. We'll see if it actually plays out that way, but I'm optimistic personally if we can keep this group together. Is your own future with Tampa, or is there a possibility of free agency coming up? Honestly, not to beat a dead horse, I haven't had this much fun in a locker room, an SHL locker room, I should say, since probably season 39, season 40 Winnipeg-ish. I'd be stupid to leave as much fun as I'm having. Season 51 is my contract season. But I think before I even get to free agency, you'll see an extension signed. Does this league make it to season 100? Provide the reasoning behind your answer, whether positive or negative, please. I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily positive or negative. That's just, holy cow, probably another, as it is, we average up roughly 6 seasons in a year. So you're talking about 8 years from now. You're asking me in the year 2027, will there still be an SHL? Probably unlikely, just because time marches on. But, it lasted this long, so who knows? Maybe it'll stick around. I don't know if it's necessarily, it's not one of those where I'm like, oh, well, this, and that makes the league unsustainable, or this, and that makes it where this league cannot die. It's just, man, that's a long time to predict something on the internet to last. Will we still be here doing this if it does? Will I still be in the SHL when I'm 38? No, probably not. God, I almost hope not. I hope I have a more interesting hobby by then, if nothing else. But then again, I've been here now for 3 years, so will I actually have a more interesting hobby by then? Probably not. Now that the move is well behind you, what do you think of your new home and city? Man, I really enjoy living in Charlotte. It's a lot nicer than when I was back in the sticks. There's a lot more to do and see, and I mean, just it's easier to get anywhere. I mean, even back when I was back home, even going to Walmart was a 15-20 minute drive. Forget going somewhere like a Best Buy or a mall or whatever. I'm talking just like going to Walmart to get something other than groceries, And now it's like anything I need to get to is within a 5-10 minute drive. And I'm fortunate with where I'm living in the Charlotte area that I'm not like in Charlotte proper. So I'm in a decent enough sized town or suburb or whatever that I can get pretty much wherever I want to go or wherever I need to go, but I'm not right in the middle of the really, downtown stuff or the inner city stuff. I'm not, packed right on top of people and having to worry about traffic on my way to work or anything like that. Like I don't even have to get on the interstate to go to work, which is awesome. So I love it personally. Your mileage may vary. Thank you, Slappy, for the questions. That concludes the questions thread portion of this, I do have a couple of questions that have come in through the live chat. And of course, if you are watching and have more questions, feel free to toss them in here. First, we have Calicar. Did Tampa win the trade? Which has been a very fun topic of conversation, especially since we faced Hamilton over the course of this playoff run. Of course, my former team. Look, I don't think you can. If I were giving the narrative answer, my player, Nikolai, the Russian prince, the Tsarevich, as Slappy likes to say, of course, Tampa won the trade because they acquired Nikolai Evans. If you're asking me that, we don't know yet. Hamilton still has to use the picks they got from the trade. If I'm being blunt, Hamilton took a former Rookie of the Year and turned him into an 11-point player. And they have to prove that, unlike the last time they got a whole bunch of valuable picks, that those players won't want to leave in free agency, or worse, ask out for a trade, or have a complaint in a completely other Discord server be construed as a request for a trade. They have to be able to actually keep the picks they acquired in the trade together to form a nucleus of a team that might make it look like they won the trade, if I'm just being blunt. So good luck to them with that. Rich, who are your fantasy sleepers this season? Let's see, I've already got the index open. Who might be a sleeper this season? Obviously, ML is not a sleeper. Let's see. Who's somebody that had a lot of hits, but maybe not a ton of points? Oh, shit. Hello, Argar. Wow. You know, what's his build looking like these days? What line was he on? What is LAP looking like? So he was top line. He's obviously the hitter on that line, judging by his stats. What might have held him back in the scoring department? Not terribly fortunate on the power play. Shooting percentage was a little low. I mean, it wasn't god awful, but, you know, he could be due for a pretty big year. And you know he'll be adding TPE this season. And his line mate his line mates at least this season. Obviously that could change. Winter is still growing. Who is the other one? I've lost my index tab. Whee! Who's the center on that line? Oh, probably. Oh yeah, duh. And again, also not in regression. Wasties player. That could be juicy. That could be really juicy. I'll have to file that one away. Now that I've given it away on a podcast. JSS is yelling at me that Flacco Lagerfield's going to be a sleeper. I don't know if we can call him a sleeper because he's been good in the past. I know he had a down season this season, but I don't know that anybody's looking around at the index and saying, oh man, I overlooked Flacco Lagerfield, but I don't know, maybe stranger things have happened. Do. Yeah, I guess those are the first two that jump out. I'd hate to research it too much and give away all my fantasy secrets. Who will I even... Yeah, down fantasy season was still 288 points. Right. So, I mean, he just hits a lot. So let's see. Who am I even in a fantasy group with? I looked at this like once and then immediately forgot. I hope it's not my turn. I haven't been pinged at all. It is not. Cool. So I'm in a group with... Oh, that's a bad joke. Pulivalmis. Who the hell are you with this username? Bjorn Lepinen is your player. You apparently are a Texas Renegade, and you used to be on the Vancouver Whalers. Well, good for you, son. Or maybe you're still on the Whalers. I don't know if you've been called up or not. That sure is a username you've got, bud. And then there's Keegan, Slowpoke. My boy Blue. Second Sucks 22. The recently retired Squall. Oh, and hi Wasty. If you're listening, you'll be pinging me soon, hopefully, because you're right before me in the draft order. Sick. So glad I had this conversation with a fellow podcaster. Thanks, Rich. He's definitely got to draft Argar before I have the chance, because he's always an LAP homer. So I didn't really give anything away there. Rich, I usually only give away my fantasy tips after I've made the picks I want. See, I never know the picks I want until I'm actually on the clock. I don't do... You do way... I've heard you, the way you talk about fantasy on your podcast, Rich. I know you put a lot more effort into this shit than I do. So that doesn't surprise me. This is literally... I'm doing more research now than I do usually an entire draft. So that's probably why I didn't get any TPE out of fantasy this season. But also, I was in the group of death, and I stand by that. I mean, for those who may not remember my group from last fantasy season, I finished 5th. Asclap won. Aaron Wilson was 2nd. Was 3rd. Joe K was 4th. I was 5th. Luke was 6th. He was a Jazzman was 7th. And Drunken Teddy was 8th. So, there was a little bit of talent in that fantasy group. Unlike last episode, I don't see a lot of people barging down the door to ask me last-minute questions and keep me on the air. I can't say I'm disappointed by that. Let me do one quick refresh of the questions thread. I see nothing. Yeah, it was a group. It was a happening, Rich, and I did not get TPE out of it. So, you'll have that. Speaking of Luke, speaking of that last group and Luke being in it, me and him have been tossing around an idea for a little while in the podcast survey. I did want to take this opportunity to mention it before I wrap up this episode. I'm glad that this fantasy sidebar reminded me to actually discuss it here on the episode. Because me and him have been tossing around the idea of doing a different kind of podcast. Because a lot of the podcasts you listen to, they follow roughly the same formula. Not all of them, but most of them, where it's like, hey, I know mine does. You intro it, maybe talk about couple quick hot button issues, then you go into your questions thread, and if there's any loose ends at the end, you tie them up, and then you have an episode. And that's, the tried and true SHL podcast, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we've been discussing, doing something a little different, where we go into an episode with one topic in mind, and we just dive into that topic for the full hour and really break it down. And it could be, maybe a hot button issue like player builds or the update scale or how many teams should make the SMJHL playoffs. Or maybe it's more of a, historical conversation. He has his trade database, maybe it's discussing best GMs in league history. It could range the board, but basically each episode would have a theme. It wouldn't be as reliant on the questions and more just really diving into these topics in a more concentrated manner where you can have a much deeper conversation with it, instead of hitting on something for 10 or 15 minutes and then ranting about it and then moving on. And it's something that the two of us have been getting really excited about discussing it. And, it's gotten to the point now where I messaged him this morning. I was like, okay, we've got to make this happen. What days are you available? When am I available? So as of right now, the plan is for us to record the first episode of that kind a week from tonight, next Tuesday night. Topic to be determined, obviously a title to be determined. If you have any suggestions on either front, feel free to leave them either in the live chat if you're with me right now, or in the comments if you listen to this later on the forum, or message me on Discord or whatever. But it's something I'm really excited about. Blues, of course, going to show up right before I go off the air. Hello, Blues. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I know Luke is going to bring a whole lot of great shit to the table with it, and it's something that he's really excited about. So I'm looking forward to that collaboration. It'll be the first time I've had really a consistent co-host project of any kind. This podcast has always either been solo or with occasional rotating guests. It started out as having a different co-host or guest each week, and I kind of got away from that with time. I always have kind of enjoyed having that interaction, that back and forth more, but it's been difficult at times to line that up and find guests and find schedules that fit and stuff. So this kind of turned into a solo podcast over time, just out of ease and convenience. But I am looking forward to doing that with Luke, and I think it'll be really, really awesome. So we'll give that a shot next week. Like I say, if there's a certain topic you would like to hear us talk about, we're all ears. And I'm really looking forward to that. Like I say, next Tuesday is what we're shooting for the first episode of that collaboration. So pretty excited about that. I wanted to mention it before I went off the air tonight, so that hopefully y'all will be as excited about it as I am. With that said, thank you to everyone who listened live, and whoever listens on demand. Of course, I've been recording on Audition, so I'll get that uploaded to SoundCloud. Maybe I need to check and make sure my shit's actually graded before I say that. Anyway, either way, I'll get it posted. And thank y'all for listening. Looking forward to the next episode, whether it be this podcast or the collab with Luke. Definitely looking forward to season 51. Definitely looking forward to being a meme for the rest of my SHL career. Thank y'all for listening. Thank you, Slappy, for the wonderful script I got to read for Losing the Bet. Y'all have a good one.